Good morning and welcome back to Morning Express. If you're just joining us, it is now time for the political point. Now, we're just 8 days to next week's repeat presidential election. Time is running out, but Jubilee and NASA seem to not be bothered by the time factor. They have sustained their grandstanding. NASA leaders maintain there will be no elections, with IEBC having not met its irreducible minimum conditions. Instead, opposition chiefs have now vowed to ensure that no voting takes place in its strongholds countrywide to advance a case of an illegitimate win for Uhuru after the 26th of October. But Jubilee is bowing to none of this. The ruling party says the elections will go on as scheduled and that Raila's withdrawal from the race is null and void. Where do we go from here? And today, NASA have temporarily called off their planned demos to condole with victims of police brutality in parts of the country. Still, the president is yet to assent to the controversial election laws bill passed last week. Why the wait? Well, it is also the day that the Supreme Court is expected to rule on IEBC chairman's role in verification of presidential results after Wafula Chebukati sought the highest court interpretation. And that is where we are as a nation. Welcome to the Political Point segment this morning, where we're set to digest these and so much more. In studio, I have Narok Senator Ledama Olekina, and a reminder that we also invited this morning Muranga Senator Irungu Kangata, who we invited and we are still expecting. He has not made his way to the show just yet. Honorable Ledama, many thanks for joining us on the Political Point.
Thank you very much.
So clearly a lot to discuss. Very unfortunate that Irungu Kangata is not here yet. But let's begin with the validity of the poll, which is now being questioned, with both Jubilee and NASA taking very hardline positions. So NASA seems to be approaching the point of advancing the case of an illegitimate win for President Uhuru Kenyatta on the basis that NASA strongholds will not vote in this coming election. Let's begin, first of all, with what constitutional basis that decision has been founded on.
I think before we even get to that point, I've got to remind Kenyans that JF Kennedy once said that those who make peaceful revolution impossible makes violent revolution possible. What we're witnessing happening in this country is that Jubilee is completely focused on taking power, any which way. When you look at what has happened in this country, we're very clear when it comes to the issues of nominations. For you to become a candidate, you have to go through nomination. Article 138 of the Constitution is very clear that if two or more candidates are nominated, then the exercise will proceed.
Right.
Now, we have found ourselves in a very difficult situation, and I tend to believe, and I keep repeating this, that this is no longer a legal battle. This is a political problem that we have, and we must come up with a political solution. Because whichever way you look at it, we in NASA are very strong and categorical that we are not going to participate in this election because we believe that the results will be the same. Nothing has changed in terms of IEBC. So for the sake of this country, what we are asking is this: what is so difficult in waiting for 90 more days for fresh nominations to be carried out? And that is where you're seeing a lot of people are going now to court. I mean, Harun Mwau, the Honorable Harun Mwau went to court. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be going to court to try and stop this thing. Because, and we perceive, we take over the legal battle to court, then it's going to complicate everything. This is a political problem. Let us come up with a political solution to this problem and save the trouble and give Kenyans
going to
a good
court.
country.
And that therein seems to be the bone of contention with many critics for the opposition, because the opposition went to court petitioning this election. They won the process, but are seemingly not following the direction of the Supreme Court to the full word. So let's talk about this nomination exercise for just a moment. Of course, the Supreme Court will be ruling next week as to whether to forcefully compel Raila Odinga to take part in the 26 repeat elections. So in the case that the IEBC will be using the previous nomination cycle where Raila Odinga was nominated, is it then sufficient ground to force him into participating in this repeat poll?
I don't believe so. I don't believe that anyone can force me, leave alone Raila Amolo Odinga, to participate in any election. I think it is constitutional right. Article 38 gives him that right. If he chooses not to, I don't think anyone will take a gun and put on his head and tell him, you must participate. So I'm not seeing the Supreme Court forcing Raila Odinga to participate in the election. You've actually rightfully said that NASA went to court and they won the election.
Right.
They won the case in court. But remember, there were certain orders which were issued. IEBC was supposed to comply. They never complied. So the problem we have in this country is that either somebody has completely taken over IEBC such that IEBC cannot function as an independent body, or the people at IEBC have just decided to destroy this country.
Right.
We wanted the servers to be open. They were not open. We requested certain irreducible minimums, and they were not adhered to. So I think the problem is this. You refuse to follow court orders. I remember very well on this show arguing that IEBC will only act when people go to court.
Right.
And in fact, I'm even surprised that some of us did not go to court to cite IEBC for contempt of court because they were asked to open the servers. So I think that the problem we have in this country, although it's a political problem, it has been brought about by IEBC not standing firm, or maybe the commissioners divided.
All right.
We are reading every day in the papers that the commissioners are divided. That could be true.
All right, let's focus on the fact that, like you mentioned, you say this is a political problem and going to court would further complicate issues. Let's find a political solution to this political problem. Like I mentioned, that there seems to be the problem. Why stop the democratic process halfway after going to the Supreme Court to petition this issue? Because this being a political problem, requiring a political solution, every political move we make is either taking us away or towards democracy. The very move, the very decision by the opposition to boycott or back out of this election, isn't that a complete, trampling, really, of democracy in the country? And where is the constitutionality in that? Because many are asking, why is it NASA documenting all this? Because they seem to have a very good case if they take all this to the Supreme Court. In terms of the irreducible minimums, why not present this to the Supreme Court? In terms of wanting reforms within the IEBC, why hasn't this been presented to the court for a determination from the court on the way forward?
I'll tell you something, and I think every Kenyan out there can see. Perception is everything. And what you see may not be the reality. And what is happening in this country right now is that everyone is looking at the courts and saying, what is this court going to rule? We have the Jubilee side citing the court as being wakora, a place of wakora. So there is that issue of legitimacy versus legality. Now, when you keep on going to court and keep on going to court over something, the orders are the same. Right. Nothing will change. If IEBC has refused to comply to the initial orders, what makes you so sure that they will comply with subsequent orders issued by the court? So I think, and that is why I'm saying, this is no longer a legal battle. This is a political problem that requires the two characters, requires the two candidates to sit together and give Kenyans, tomorrow. Because where we stand right now, we are actually on a self-destruction mode. Very soon you will find that businesses will collapse. I'm speaking here as a politician, but also as a businessman, and we are suffering. And we cannot allow, as a NASA senator, I'm not going to participate in the elections. Right. And I've asked all my supporters not to participate in the election because I feel that our democratic right has been violated. When you see the police brutality, when you see the number of people who are dying in this country, it is very sad. You cannot force people to go out and vote when you are not willing to accept, what the courts have asked you. So let us take this agenda out of, or this discussion away from the courts. Because whether or not the courts rule, if the Jubilee government has said they will do a certain thing the way they have, they're the ones in power. All
right. Let's discuss the risk of boycotting this election in the wake of the amendments, electoral law amendments, that President Uhuru Kenyatta is yet to assent to. Because at the end of the day, if those amendments are assented to, they really leave two options for Raila Odinga. One is if he really wants to withdraw, then he needs to make a formal application then to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. And the other is that if, again, he does not go to the polls, then Uhuru Kenyatta will be declared president by hook or crook, so to speak. So in light of that, what is the implication from NASA in terms of thinking ahead of, the plan to having a case of an illegitimate election for President Uhuru Kenyatta? How is NASA planning to ensure that even one single constituency does not vote?
Very interesting question. One of the first things that I have to respond to you is that I still hold the view that the president will not assent to the elections amendment laws. Because even the Jubilee senators, who I know, and other members of parliament, do not really like these amendments. Because this is a double-edged sword. You know, today you're on that side, tomorrow you'll be here. They have to think about 2022, what will happen to them when they're on this side. So I think the president used that opportunity so that he can be able to have something that will force NASA to go to the polls. I also don't believe that even if the president was to assent to that act, to that bill, I don't believe that it will be used in this current election. If you go back to the Supreme Court decision, the Chief Justice was very clear on what the repeat election means.
Right.
It was supposed to be held under the existing laws. So when you come and change the laws so that you can be able to now apply, that will not be valid. And I hold the view that on the issue of formal withdrawal, I believe Raila did. Raila wrote a letter. He wrote a letter to IBC and he told them that I'm not going to be participating in this election.
There is a controversial Form 24A that has not been signed.
In my view, the Form 24A, you're supposed to sign 3 days after the nominations. When were nominations carried out in this country? It was back in May. So 3 days back in May. So I think the best thing we can do to save this country is to go and have fresh nominations. Let anyone, even if Ledama wants to run for president, which one day I will, in that case, I'm given an opportunity to do that.
Right.
So I think for the sake of this country, for the sake of the business of this country, let us not be too quick to have a president. Yet, I suppose tomorrow, Jubilee forced their way, and they go and vote. Maybe only 4 million vote out of the 19 million. Is that really the will of the people?
There's not the inclusion of other presidential candidates, a case that is also still in court, with the likes of Ekuru Court and the rest of the presidential candidates that participated in the August 8th elections. And NASA seems to hold the stance that the likes of Ekuru Court are being used to, by Jubilee to scuttle NASA's efforts with regard to the 26th October election. But don't you think that their inclusion then will pretty much make a case for a legitimate election?
First of all, what I believe is that I think IEBC interpreted, yet again, like they did in the first place, they interpreted the decision of Mativa, or Mativo, Judge Mativo,
yes,
wrongly. Because Ekuru Court went and requested the court to be allowed to be included in the repeat election. It was Ekuru Court who went, and the judge made that ruling. A petitioner is always bound to his pleadings. These other candidates, I think it's just a way that IEBC, and like I said, I believe that IEBC has been taken over by somebody, maybe Jubilee, maybe someone else, who wants to ensure that if tomorrow Ekuru Court comes to his senses and decide, because remember, Ekuru Court, and he's my very good friend, and I've had really lengthy discussions with him. In the first place, he's the one who started complaining about 1.2 million extra votes which were printed by IEBC.
Right.
He raised concerns about that. What happened overnight? When I met Ekuru Court, he told me, I'm going to meet with the IEBC to discuss these things. And I've asked IEBC to share what they have told me with the public, not just to hold boardroom meetings. So I believe that that move of including other candidates was that in the event that Ekuru Court comes to his senses and says, this is the same IEBC that I've complained about, this is the same IEBC that I supported Raila Amolo Odinga case in court, and say that they did not carry this election in a free and fair, transparent manner. If he comes back to his senses, then they will have other people who will still be in the ballot.
All right.
So I believe that other decisions which will come. I know this case by the Honorable Haron Mwao might end up changing everything, but ultimately, I believe that if we care about this country, it is a high time that we allow fresh nominations to take place so that everyone we can level the playing field. Right now, we are arguing that Jubilee is taking advantage of it being in the government. They're using public resources to be able to campaign, okay? Once they're removed and everything is level, it's a level playing field, there, and all those changes are brought into IEBC, I believe that Kenya will get a better president.
All right. I'd like us to still focus on the nomination, but NASA maintains that they will not go to court with some of these issues because you say, going to court is too much. This is a political problem. We need a political solution. But, part of the reason that you're boycotting this election as NASA is because of the irreducible minimums and the reforms within the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. But the issue of the election amendment laws also comes in. If NASA is so confident that if enacted, these laws will not be used in this election, then why is it being fronted by the opposition as an impediment to this current election?
Because it's not only about this election, and we've repeated that. It's about posterity. It is about the future of this country. Why pass amendment laws which are double-edged swords, which will, in fact, what NASA is doing is that it is protecting the Jubilee administration. It is protecting Jubilee members of parliament from being, cut by the same sword that they're passing now. I keep on saying that these amendment laws were not meant for the good of the public, but for private benefit. It was meant to ensure that the only person who can be able to be declared as president of this country is Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta.
Why then didn't NASA show their goodwill in protecting this country by taking part in the public hearings and the debates surrounding these
What difference does it make? What difference does it make? Jubilee have their illegal numbers in the House. They'll use their power. You can see the whole process. If Jubilee really cared about coming up with amendment laws that will be able to help this country, why rush them? Why rush the process? The procedure was completely wrong.
Right.
So I think in the sense, why should we legitimate their illegal process? So in our view, there's no point of us participating, in destroying this country. We care about this country. Raila Amolo Odinga, Orengo, and so many other Kenyans fought for the independence of this country, the second liberation. Now, we're very lucky that they're there to fight for the third liberation of this country. What we are seeing happening is not right. The people who are dying, as a matter of fact, I know some people, some lawyers who are writing to the ICC and telling ICC, you need to come to Kenya now. Don't come later and complain that you have not been given access to evidence. You need to be here right now. So that whoever commit the atrocities, whoever has killed the 33 Kenyans can be taken liable.
All right, let's focus on that, the demonstrations that have led to the death and the injuries of several NASA supporters. We've had top security officials, including acting Interior CS Fred Matiang'i, banning the demos in major cities across the country. NASA has, however, gone ahead to defy that order, terming it as unconstitutional. But again, the constitutionality of the demos as it stands today, because NASA has said there will be demos every single day, save for today, as they condole with those who the injured and the families of those who've lost their lives. But again, what are these daily demos founded on if NASA has decided they will not take part in this election?
Article 37 of the Constitution is very clear. It gives us the right to demonstrate, to picket, and we've got to demonstrate. We've got to tell our people what is going on. Not everyone has the liberty or the advantage of understanding what is happening in terms of all these laws which are being changed, in terms of the entire electoral process. And I think I read somewhere today that the most violent element in a society is ignorance. A lot of people are ignorant. We need to be able to enlighten them. We need to tell them this is what is happening. Wake up, smell the coffee, or you're going to continue suffering. We have seen multi-billionaires made over a period of 4 years. And well, our Kenyans are still languishing in poverty. So what we need to do is we need to educate our Kenyans. We need to tell them that you've got this right. You need to stand up and fight for your right. So in terms of Matiang'i's decision to what do you call it?
Ban the demonstration.
To ban the demonstration, that is an illegal process. We've got authorities in court that have clearly made it very clear that there's no way that the state can ban any demonstration.
It seems to be a problem, Senator Ledama, when NASA seems on one hand to say going to the court is too much, let's find a political solution, but when it suits them, they really refer back to the court, as you've just done now, in a bid to legitimize their actions. Because the question has been, if there are charges of crimes against humanity, then who will be responsible? On one hand, there is the police officers that NASA has accused of using excessive force. On the other hand, we do have a a section of activists and even demonstrators taking part even in Kisumu demonstrations, saying it was indeed a section of NASA supporters that began throwing stones, that began provoking police officers. Why aren't we seeing enough NASA leaders coming out on this protest from beginning to end to ensure that there are indeed peaceful demonstrations instead of relying on hearsay and pictures going around on social media?
No, pictures don't lie. And I don't think it is Photoshop for you to see a businessman on his border carrying his passenger, that is where he gets his daily bread, being stopped by the police, being kicked, okay, being nearly killed, and then immediately after, the police go ahead and destroy his motorbike. Right. Okay? That is not quantum physics. What it is that Kenyans are seeing that the police are being used to destroy this economy. In fact, businessmen should be very careful. Now, they should talk to Jubilee. They should talk to NASA. Because what we are doing as NASA is that we are just exercising our democratic right. We are demonstrating peacefully. But when the police start throwing tear gas, yesterday, our honorable member Janet Ongera and Gladys Wanga were nearly killed. 2 days ago, Amisi was nearly killed. How do you throw tear gas inside a motor vehicle which is moving? So what we are seeing is that the police are using excessive force. If you want to stop me from demonstrating, if you see me doing anything illegal, even if you have to throw the tear gas, don't throw it. Don't shoot under, in the back of my car.
All right. I want us to hear, in just a moment, what Senator James Orengo had to say with regard to the cases of police brutality in the country. We'll listen to that in just a moment, as well as what President Uhuru Kenyatta had to say. But would you say that NASA leaders, because they say they have marshals in this protest, have managed these protests, these demonstrations in the best possible way to reduce these instances of looting, destruction of property and killings?
Absolutely. And I could tell you this, not a single NASA demonstrator is engaging in any illegal activities. I've participated in the demonstrations, and I was surprised. People from Mathare, people from Kibera, they walk with me in the same way. This is a good time for us to demonstrate. Let us go. You're joining us. None of them. But we've got this so-called Nairobi business community who...
Which is not there in Kisumu,
I mean, it is not there in Kisumu, but how do you know that it's not there in Kisumu? How do you know that it's not there in Kisumu? Okay? We're talking of a government that speaks double talk, double standards. How come that Nairobi business community is not being forced out of the streets? Why are they being allowed to enter in and participate?
All right. Let's listen in to what Senator James Orengo had to say with regard to the demonstrations taking place, giving a stern warning to Acting Interior CS Fred Matiang'i and Inspector General of Police Joseph Boynet that they will file charges on crimes against humanity if the cases of excessive use of force do not stop. Listen.
Police are using a different standard in responding to demonstrators in Nyanza and other areas we consider to be strongholds of NASA, the NASA coalition. In addition to killings and maiming, the police also engage in a systematic plot of looting and destruction of property. Until now, the police are still struggling to find a rationale for the killings. One senior officer said that the three were shot while trying to invade a police station. Another has said they were looting a shop. Yet another said they attacked a police officer in the course of the protests. Our supporters from the ground have said that none of these theories being advanced by the police is true.
Well, amid accusations of police brutality and the use of excessive force on protesters with reported deaths in parts of the country, President Uhuru Kenyatta has defended police officers, saying they are acting within the law. But Senator James Orengo there claims police are targeting opposition zones, dismissing initial reports that demonstrators stormed a police station, forcing police to repulse them. Listen in to what President Uhuru Kenyatta had to say.
Hakuna mtu amezuiwa kufanya maandamano ya amani. Lakini ile kitu sisi hatuwezi kukubali ni uharibifu wa mali na wizi. Hawa watu ambao wanatumia maandamano kuibia Wakenya, looters na vandals, hao watachukuliwa hatua kulingana na vile sheria imeandikwa. Hakuna mchezo bwana, hakuna mchezo hapa, hakuna mchezo.
All right, so we'll be discussing those sentiments in just a moment. But at this point, we'd like to release our viewers watching us on KTN Home. Life and Style is coming up next. But this conversation with Narok Senator Ledama Olikina continues right here on KTN News. All right, Senator. So there we go. President Uhuru Kenyatta, they're responding, saying everybody has a right to demonstrations. So once again, NASA has been complaining a lot about the cases of police brutality. What, however, is the opposition doing in a bid to offer a solution here? Because, again, you say you will not go to court, instead find a political solution to this political problem.
No, I didn't say that we will not go to court in terms of, citing the Jubilee administration, the police boss, and even the cabinet secretary, in terms of what is happening to our Kenyans. When we're on break, I've just been sent a picture of a welder in Kisumu who was busy doing his work to get money to feed his family, and he was shot in the head. Was he also participating in the demonstration? I think what is happening is that this country is coming down to a halt. And for the sake of this country, we as NASA will play our part where it fits us to go to court, and I'm going to use the word fit, and I'll explain why I'm saying that. For us to protect our Kenyans, for us to protect our supporters. Remember, today we called off the demonstration the whole day today so that we can go and attend to the people who were killed, fighting for their democratic rights. So what we are going to do is this. We will take this government to account. We cannot allow our Kenyans to be killed. What they were trying to do yesterday, if they were trying to stop us, I remember last week, CS acting Cabinet Secretary for Interior, CS Matiang'i, banned the demonstration in the CBD. What were they doing? Following Gladys Wanga all the way to her residence, and Janet Ongera all the way to their residence, if they are not actually trying to kill these people. What is happening is this. I've had the president talk and saying looting. Was that person looting? Was that person in a motorbike doing his business looting? Was this person who was welding looting? I mean, seriously. Political power is gained by those who will vote for you and those who will not vote for you. So don't try to get political power by forcing everyone. There's a difference between coercion and seducing. If you want me to follow you, seduce me. I'm sorry to use that word, but if you coerce me and you force me to follow you, I'll do so to save my life, but, I may choose not to do so and just stay there.
I want us to wind up on this, but the argument by Fred Matiang'i has been that there are different rules and procedures of dealing with protesters that are armed in any particular situation.
What do you mean
they
protesters
say
that are
the
armed?
Protesters in some of these cases are armed with stones, armed with sticks and batons. And so in that case then, again, I ask, do you think the NASA leadership has properly managed these demonstrations to ensure without a doubt that there is no cases of looting, destruction of property, and provocation of police officers?
My answer to you remains absolutely yes. Every time we hold a demonstration, we call on our supporters and we tell them we will carry out the demonstration peacefully. We do not want you to touch anything. We give them food, we give them bread, we give them water to support them. We don't want them touching anything. All we want is that we want you to fight for this country.
But you said videos and pictures don't lie. We have seen videos and pictures of the looting and destruction of property.
But I can just tell you that those are not NASA supporters. I can authoritatively say those are not NASA supporters. That is the so-called Nairobi business community, which is infiltrating into our processions and causing all that problem. I have personally seen some people being kicked out by other NASA supporters demonstrating when they try to steal or to try to touch anyone's properties. Who owns the monopoly of guns in this country? Okay? It is the police. So what we are asking our Kenyans is this: fight for your rights. If you do not fight for your rights, then you have no reason calling yourself a Kenyan. We are calling for every Kenyan to defend this constitution. And by defending this constitution, if it means you not participating in this election, in my view, that's what it means, because this is not this is not a properly conducted election.
All right, and of course it is a conversation we'll be advancing, because I saw one of our viewers on social media asking what happened to the stocking up of rubber bullets in the country, and why are we not seeing these being used in these instances as well. But let's talk solutions, Senator, because as it stands, NASA's holds that it will not take part in this repeat election. The Supreme Court will be ruling on that as to whether Raila Odinga will have to forcefully perhaps take part in this election. But NASA is clearly building a case of an illegitimate election for President Uhuru Kenyatta, a case that will only be petitioned or determined in a court of law. So once again, many questions are being asked as to why isn't NASA documenting all these issues and taking them to court? Is it worth it going to an election right now with the legal risk of having an election without a nomination that may at the end of the day result in an illegitimate election? It is the same opposition that has been complaining about how expensive this election has been, how expensive the repeat election has been. Why then let the taxpayer go through paying another extra 12 billion shillings just to petition for a fresh election after that?
Let me tell you, what this Jubilee government is doing is that, first of all, they brought in amendment laws. They passed them to benefit Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and William Ruto. Secondly, they passed a supplementary budget to benefit Uhuru Muigai and William Ruto in terms of having this illegal election. In the Senate... But
you say those will not be used in this election.
Let me tell you, the laws, no. The laws cannot apply in this election, even if they try to push themselves. And the day, I can tell you this as a fact, the day that Uhuru was sent to those laws, the next day, actually the same day, we'll be in court to set them aside. We will do that because we do not want this country taken back to the ages, to the dark ages. That's number one. Number two, if this government really cared so much about the well-being of its citizens, the first thing it should have done is this. When in the Senate we approved the cash disbursement schedule to the counties, that money should have been sent to the counties. Until today, that money has not been sent to the counties. So if you cared about this country, send the money to the counties. Let the people who are owed money be paid their debts. When you come up with selective laws or measures that are aimed at benefiting you, then we are left with nothing but to conclude that you only care about being in power. You don't care about the will of the people. That is number one. Number two, everyone is helping us document all these illegalities, the police brutality. And I assure you, this time around, and I want to remind everyone that our cases at IECC are still valid. You know, they can be recalled at any time. And I want to tell them that IECC is already in this country. And very soon they'll be making their presence known. You know, because we cannot allow. When you see AMREF, or is it Amnesty International, coming out with a report of how many people have been killed by the police, then serious things will happen. Serious things will follow.
All right. I want to take a few calls, but when you come back, we have to advance this conversation because, again, there still seems to be loopholes in the legal consistency of NASA's arguments and, you know, when they choose to go to court. Because you just said if President Uhuru Kenyatta sends to this amendment, said we will be going back to court to thwarting this. So the question still remains, why not go to court with all these irreducible minimums? But we'll come back to that. Let's take a few calls and hear what our viewers have to say this morning.
All right.